Hi, I'm Maggie. I'm a licensed clinical psychotherapist. I have degrees in psychology, theology, and marriage and family therapy, and a national certification in dialectical behavioral therapy. In this video, I'm not seeking to diagnose anyone. I'm only willing to offer insight into situations like these. Hi, everybody. I am running so late today. Looks like Nina is first, so her comment is starred. Hi, Adric. Thank you for being in here. I was having a terrible time putting my earring on. I did not want to go. Okay, so today we're going to talk about unfluck yourself. I'm going to say fluck. Okay. Hopefully that works for the YouTube algorithm. We shall see. We shall see. Hopefully everybody's having a good Sunday. I am not going to keep you guys long. It's a super busy day, which is why I'm running behind. And I don't want to keep you guys on your Sunday either. So we're going to talk about self-sabotage. Hi, Coffee Espueno. Thank you for being in here. All right. So have you ever said or thought, fluck my life? That became kind of a trendy statement for a little while, but I think it kind of hit for some people, I've thought it, like this is happening, that is happening, fluck my life, or feeling like that you flucked up big time. Like, oh man, I totally flucked up. So, again, I'm going to say fluck, not the other one. I read Pell Sleeper Cell, which is Lewis, right? Yeah, Adrix is often, Cafe is Bueno says every 2 to 3 days. Yeah, like we all think it, right? Like I flucked up big time, or man, I flucked up my whole life. Now, have you guys ever thought, oh man, I flucked my whole life? Like my whole life is flucked up now. Like this mistake that I made, this thing that I did, it's ruined everything. My whole life is ruined. And then come to find out, it really wasn't that big of a deal. Like at the end of the day, or a year or two later, wasn't really that big of a deal, right? So we always have to keep that in mind too, is that how we feel in the moment is just information. So this is something that I repeat often. Emotions and feelings are sensory information. So it's just like smelling or seeing or tasting or touching your external world, and that gives you information. Your feelings, how you feel about something, an emotion, gives you its sensory information about your internal state. Just like pain is actually information. Okay? It's just information. Okay. So if you've said, fluck my life, I flucked up, those kind of things, so you've probably experienced self-sabotage. Now, some of us will say, fluck my life, and it has nothing to do with any mistakes we made. But if this has to do with things you've done and you feel like you flucked up big time, this might be self-sabotage. Okay, Capoeira's Bueno says, yeah, it happens more with age, in my opinion. 20 years ago FML versus 40-year-old FML. Oh, 20-year-old FML versus 40-year-old FML. I think you can also look at it the other way, that the older you get, the less you care. Now, the older you get, you're trying to keep other 20-year-olds from making your same mistakes. Excuse me. Because you saw what it did, right? You saw that it actually messed with your life you know, and the things that a 20-year-old actually cares about, not everything, but there are some things that a 20-year-old cares about that you're like, that's not gonna be important in 20 years. Um, but 20-year-olds can look at 40-year-olds and be like, "That old man's full of crap," or "That old woman's full of crap." Um, I think, goes both ways. But, if I look back at my 20-year-old FMLs, I was, highly skilled in self-sabotage. If I did one thing right, it was sabotaging my success. So you have to learn after a while. Now, for me, the way I learned to not sabotage my success is to always just be authentically me, or as authentic as I can be in any given situation, right? Um, all of us have an ego. I mean, there's pretty lighting in here. I've got, eye makeup on and lip gloss, I'm not I'm not coming on here rolling out of the shower. So, as you could see by me throwing on my earring at the very end. Okay. Cafe Buenos got his popcorn out. Yeah. All right. So, what is self-sabotage? It seems like it's inherent in the name, but you know me and we're going to do definitions. Self-sabotage is when you notes in front, when you hinder or harm yourself unintentionally. So you didn't go about this to FML, you didn't do the thing to bite you in the booty. Um, but you've done something that unintentionally blows back on you, or it hinders your life. Now, a lot of times self-sabotage in its forms, um, there's usually this underlying subconscious motivation behind it. So it seems like, oh, I did this thing and it was completely unintentional, that it blew back on me and that it was but your subconscious is in there going, nah, I didn't. I did that. So if we have an unhealed or an unhealthy subconscious, shadow, inner child, whatever terminology you want to use, if we if those things are unhealthy, then the type of self-sabotage we do gets more and more unhealthy, right? But subconscious will do some things. So um, it was Jung that said, if you never integrate your shadow, you will go through life and random things will happen and you'll call it fate. So think about that. Is that a lot of times our subconscious, our shadow, our internal world is in the driver's seat more than we want it to be, which is a problem. So, some examples, or if you guys think of examples, throw them in there. Some examples that I thought about, procrastination. That can be self-sabotage, right? So we keep putting it off, we keep putting it off, we keep putting it off. And then we have to stay up for the next 24 hours, not sleep, super tired, in a bad mood, eating junk food because we now have to get this thing done that we've procrastinated, right? So we've hindered or harmed ourselves in this way, right? Like we're up all night or we're staying up late, we're eating junk food because we don't have time to cook, right? You just order in Uber Eats and getting it done. Now, you didn't procrastinate so that you would lose sleep and eat junk, right? So that is unintentional. I don't want to harm myself. So there's another motivation behind procrastination. Now, people who struggle with ADHD, or have some of the symptomology of ADHD that shows up, um, procrastination kind of goes with the territory. And some of that is because when you have ADHD, you have this thing called hyperfocus, which is like it's like a superpower almost. It's like when hyper focus kicks in, you can sit down, totally focus on something for extensive periods of time, and your focus is so good that you are in the minutia and you're moving at a good clip. So when they talk about ADHD, they don't have focus. It's more like their focus is in a million places until hyperfocus kicks in, which again is kind of it's kind of a superpower. So where procrastination comes in is that for hyperfocus to kick in, it needs pressure. There has to be pressure. You can't just be like, some internal switch, click on hyperfocus. That's not how that works. It needs pressure behind it, right? So it needs somebody mad at you. It needs a time constraint. It needs some sort of parameters. It needs being competitive, right? It needs an external, and I'm saying external now, I didn't before, but to be clear, external pressure, right? So you can beat yourself up. Why do I keep putting this off? Why am I procrastinating? I'm such a this, that, and the other, right? It doesn't work. The internal pressure doesn't work because then your subconscious, is sitting there with a hoagie, like, yeah, we do not care. So, the internal pressure doesn't matter. But this is again where the subconscious understands that your hyperfocus is your superpower. So it's going to help you to procrastinate until enough pressure builds up to where you bust it out and you get the thing done. And it's great because you will focus so intentionally and for such an extended period of time. It's great work. People who took 2 to 3 months to do it, it's as good or better than theirs. So procrastination. Cafe Bueno says, how about giving up by not trying? I would fail, so why bother? Whew. This, now, again, it can be tied to ADHD or symptomology of ADHD, but to be clear, there's some symptomology of ADHD that also looks like anxiety. It also looks like trauma effects. It also looks like PTSD. It can also look like autism. So there's overlap, and I'm not saying you have any of that because I had to put this on a disclaimer. We all have all symptoms of every mental illness. We all do. So self-diagnose, that's the only arena where self-diagnosis becomes a problem because we all have all symptoms, okay? It's when the symptoms create disorder in your life. That's why they're called disorders, by the way. It's when the symptoms create disorder, so even if it bothers you some and you have to you have to do workarounds and you have to work with it. If it's not causing disorder for you, then it's not a disorder. Okay. And when I say every symptom, I mean every symptom. We've all been somewhere, been at home by yourself, let's say, and you hear somebody say your name, and there's literally nobody in the house. So we've all heard voices. Now it's exceedingly rare. Again, it doesn't cause a disorder. It's when it's constant, that it causes a disorder. So I should put that on the disclaimer. Anyway, see how I have to keep notes? So giving up by not trying, I would fail, so why bother? So and yes, that is self-sabotage. So there's a couple things that happen. So there's one where you have this internal voice that is not nice to you. So this is kind of like your internal Joker, like your Batman, this is your Joker, okay? So you have this internal voice who is repeating concepts or words that you were told before. So, and the reason I say concepts is because it's not always the exact phrases or said in the exact voice of people who have said this, but at some point in time, someone made you feel like you're going to fail, right? It could even be that you put your all into something and tried super hard and it failed, and then you were shamed and blamed, and so again the voice, right, makes you feel like, why bother, I'm going to fail. Okay, there's this odd flip side to that, is that sometimes people will not try because it's too easy. Like, even if it's something really hard, their brain tells them, "No, I can do that. I could do that, and because I could, I don't want to." But if it gets a little bit harder, to where it becomes a question about whether you could, then this weird thing happens where your brain starts telling you, "Well, if I can't be the best, I don't wanna do it at all. I don't wanna do something where I'm gonna be mediocre." So there's all these different rationales that can be really irrational that our brains tell us for not even trying, for like giving up, not even trying, quitting, because it doesn't matter, you're going to fail, or it's too easy, or now it's, I can't be the best. Um, so shout out to the gifted classes kids for those last two. Right? That happens with a lot of people who are in gifted classes. There's just this overarching issue with procrastination, motivation, and not trying. So maybe somebody will study that. Maybe they did. I don't know. I haven't ever looked it up. Um, Hi Rael, thank you for being here. Yeah, Rael says very damaging to look at yourself as a failure through other people's eyes. I mean, absolutely, right? This was us absorbing other people's poison, right? So people are throwing poison at us and we're internalizing it. And most of that internalizing happens when we're children. So it's so unfortunate. It sticks with us. Like our shadow, our internal state, our inner child absorbs it and keeps it and just holds on to it and is going to yell it at you every so often, right? Until you deal with it. Okay. Hi, Snowman. Thanks for being in here. Thank you, Snowman. Okay. So another one is perfectionism, which kind of hits on that. It's too simple. It'll be too easy. It's not a challenge. So I won't feel proud of my work. It's not necessarily that I'll get accolades. It's more, I won't be proud of it because it was too simple. To Well, now if I can't be the best, if I can't be perfect, if I can't be the best, if I can't win the thing, right? Like, because now we've turned it into a competition somehow, then I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it if I'm middle of the pack, right? And it doesn't even matter if it's something where like, um, okay, so I was in something one time where it was the top 10 people of the nation. Everybody had to be nominated, okay? And you had to submit a bunch of paperwork to, I guess, participate. Like, you were nominated so many times, so you are in the top 10. Now you have to do this stuff. And there was this little, again, shout out to the gifted kids. There was this little part of me that was like, well, I mean, would I even win? It's the top 10 of the nation. Didn't I already win? I had to have somebody talk to me about that, like, even if you came in 10th, like, top 10 of the nation, like, stop it. So, because for, that it was that internal drive that was like, "Man, this is the top 10 people of the nation. I don't even wanna compete with them." I mean, it's weird, but self-sabotage, and we all do it. So, perfectionism can also immobilize us, right? To where We're so concerned with the minutia and the little teeny tiny details of trying to be just right that we lose the big picture. Okay. So to use just a really oversimplified example, if if I was running a race, which isn't going to happen. Um if I was running a race, right? And perfectionism was part of my self-sabotage, then the day before I'm concerned with getting a haircut, or getting my hair done. Um trying on multiple outfits for the race. Making sure that my shoes match my outfit. Um, getting my nails done, or because I have to be perfect. And so then the problem becomes then when I go to run the race and everybody else the day before was doing a bunch of stuff to prepare for the actual race. Now I have sabotaged myself. It's unintentional, right? Like I wanted to win the race, but I so felt like everything had to be perfect. And sometimes people put that on us, right? Especially in this day and age of ego and social media where you get on social media and you say something that's kind of important. Some people like it. It doesn't hurt anybody. And then you get people in the comments like, your hair's out of place and your nose goes to the left. And you shouldn't have worn that jacket with that shirt, right? Like, if perfectionism is part of your self-sabotage, then that's going to hit for you, right? Like, oh my gosh, that means the next time that I'm on social media, I got to change the angle for my nose and make sure my shirt looks like this and that my hair is, who cares? Who cares? Unfortunately, perfectionism is put on us by society as well, right? Like every time we want to advance something, the government's, if only you'd have done this, you could have had it. And it's really something that's either not true or doesn't matter in the long run, right? But it gets put on us. And then we become so mired in the minutia that we are immobile at that point because we're so trying to be perfect. Okay. And as far as society goes, then we start policing each other to be perfect. It's a mess. Okay. Um High complex design. He says analysis paralysis. Yeah, that happens too. Getting bogged down in the minutia, and then you have no motivation whatsoever. Okay. And then Rael says, yeah, I've said for years that we all need to pat ourselves on the back for surviving adults as children. For sure. Especially those of us from Gen X. It's amazing that we survived, right? But every generation has its battles and ability to survive. So another form of self-sabotage is like substance use, which in psychology and mental health, we call that self-medicating, substance abuse, not necessarily substance use, but substance abuse. We call that self-medicating because it's a form of, putting some salve on some type of pain or, reducing your anxiety or, being able to stay up days at a time, whatever it is, it's a form of self-medication and it definitely hinders and harms you in the long run, but that's not the intention in the immediate. Okay. Hi, Lawrence Ross. Thanks for being in here. Can getting used to failure bring about a fear of success? Absolutely. 100%. Because what we know, what we've lived with our entire life is what's comfortable. Okay. And just to use your terminology, failure and success, um, And the reason I say I'm using your terminology is because sometimes society says this is what's successful and this is a failure. And the older you get, you realize life is much more complex yet simpler than that. So if you're used to failing, or being seen as a failure, right? Like your whole childhood, fail, fail, fail. And you know how to bounce back from failure. You know what you do the next day after you fail at something. You know how to talk about it. You know how to rationalize it. You know what to do with something that's deemed a failure. If you've never succeeded in your own mind, if if you've never succeeded, then you don't know what to do the moment after you succeed. You don't know what to do the morning after you succeed. You don't know how to button up success, right? Think about people where we talk about sore winners. They used to talk about sore losers or poor losers, bad losers. Um, there are poor winners because they literally don't know what to do with it. you know? And then sometimes those people are the ones who 2 weeks later, they're telling you again how they won the potato sack race at their family gathering because it was the first time they ever won anything. And you're like, come on, button it up, move on to the next thing. But we are going to have that part of it that's like that subconscious, that internal, that's like, I don't know what to do if we win. And that is really scary. I know what to do if we lose. So I'm going to make you self-sabotage so that maybe you lose or come in second because we know what to do with that and that's really comfortable. I know how to deal with that. Now I'm going to talk about relationships here in a minute. So that's part of that too. Yeah. Ryle says, yeah, Gen X. Ryle also says, yeah, if that inner voice is someone else's in your mind, you're living life on autopilot. You're not in the fullness of life, right? Like you're not authentic. If you were living your life to stick it to that inner voice, that's a problem too. But if you're going by what that inner voice is telling you, it's just repeating stuff from a long time ago that may not even be true, probably is not true, right? Our inner voice is not rational by any means. Yeah, by any means. Fear of success, I think, is worse because fear of failure can make you concentrate more on the task. Fear of success means you don't even regard yourself as experiencing success, right? And so then if you are successful, then you get that feeling of the other shoe's going to drop. That's what Ryle's talking about. Like something is working, I won something, and then you become very scared about when are they going to take this away from me? When are they going to find out I actually didn't win? When are they going to, you get, hold on, it's going to come to me. Imposter syndrome, where if people think too much more of you than you think of yourself, then you feel like you're an imposter or you somehow like scammed them or manipulated them, or because if they knew the real you, they wouldn't really like you, or they wouldn't think so highly of you. So you feel like an imposter, and it's hard to get past imposter syndrome because it's not real. It's just fear of success or fear of people actually liking you. Okay. All right. Hi, timekeeper. Thanks for being here. Success helps build esteem and confidence. Yeah, in the same way, right? Because once you start to succeed, then that starts to feel comfortable and you know what to do with it, right? You know what you do right after success. You know how to build on your success. So instead of being afraid the other shoe's going to drop, now I'm thinking about how do I build on this success? What do I do next? What's my next move, right? And then we call that self-esteem and confidence, right? But really, it's just creating comfort in the unknown. So anything we want to do that is new, We have to create comfort in the unknown, and that's what self-sabotage tries to stop us from that because it's comfortable in the known. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So we talked about self-medicating, substance abuse, comfort eating, in much the same way. Comfort eating is, I'm having an emotion, I'm having a issue, I'm having a thought, I'm tired or I'm bored or I'm sad or, or, and we eat comfort food, and even to the point of it almost has become like jokey, when you watch movies and the man and the woman break up and then the woman or, sometimes the man is sitting there with, a half gallon of Haagen-Dazs, just eating it and crying, eating the whole thing. Or, the guys go to their buddy's house to check on him after the breakup, and there's like pizza boxes and empty chips. And, it has become kind of a joke, when actually that's a form of self-medicating and self-sabotaging, right? We don't, our intention was not to eat a bunch of junk and feel terrible. It was to just feel better in the moment. So we are hindering ourselves unintentionally. What people don't necessarily understand about that, substance abuse is this way, comfort eating. I mean, all of it, that sabotage, think about that word, because it's similar to a punishment, right? So it's like, I don't deserve to be healthy, right? I don't deserve good food. I don't, you know, F my life. I effed this up. We broke up. And the world as I know it is over. I'm very uncomfortable with what this is going to mean. Um, I don't deserve this, and I'm having this feeling. So let me eat a gallon of ice cream. Okay. So essentially, we're creating problems that interfere with our own personal goals, right? We're creating problems. We're hindering ourselves unintentionally. Okay. So there are some things besides what our parents tell us or what people tell us in our childhood. Sorry, my puppy's cuddling with my toes. There are some things that we hear from society as well. And I was gonna go deep into this, and then I thought, I don't want the video taken down right away. So you guys are gonna have to read between the lines, okay? You can put it in the chat if you want to. Just be careful how you spell words. But we have things like propaganda. So, part of that is media, right? So we have this propaganda that is continuously telling us about ourselves. Okay. So just as an example, because it gets thrown around a lot, fashion. Okay. So fashion tells women, if you look at how models have been, since the start of modeling pretty much, but like especially since the 80s, um, they're telling women how they're supposed to look, right? Like, because this is, and they call it the pinnacle of fashion, the beauty, the artistry, the blah, 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 blah. So this is what, and women who are into fashion, which are several, they're seeing this in the magazines and the shows and all this. So what does it tell women? You need to be super tall, over 5'10" for sure, right? But close to 6 foot tall, you need to have super long legs, be ridiculously thin, right? So you need to be 5'11" and like 110 pounds, and look ridiculously young, right? Long hair. Now, when we're in more modern times, there's more representation. But if we think about up until, just the last few years. So this sort of propaganda tells women this is what you're supposed to look like. Now, there are things that we cannot change, right? Like I'm never going to be 5'11". because when it's race and it's height and it's weight and it's build and it's all these things, there's just things you're never going to be. And so you hear enough propaganda and you internalize it, you know, it's because you're too short. It's because you weigh more than 86 pounds. It's because your legs aren't long. It's because, you can't grow super long hair. But this happens with a lot of demographics of people where propaganda and the media tries to tell you about yourself. And then we begin to internalize it and think it about ourselves. And then we think it of other people who are in the same demographic with us because that's what we heard and we internalized it. So when we internalize it, we self-sabotage, moving forward because, this is what I know about myself, right? Stereotypes in a very similar vein. So where stereotypes can be used in propaganda or may even come from propaganda, stereotypes are when the propaganda becomes the common vernacular, when it becomes what other people just in everyday life utilize and operate on. So this is when we hear propaganda about other people in relationship to us. Okay, so this is how brown-eyed people treat hazel-eyed people, whatever. Again, I don't want to get too much into it, but y'all know what I'm talking about. Then we start believing it about them in relationships to us. Now, because we've internalized that, we are then also self-sabotaging because we are interacting in the world believing stereotypes, not just about ourselves, but about other people that are not true. Okay. Hi, Mom Brinkley. Or is it Dad Brinkley? Tell us. Is it David or is it Christy? Okay. Another way that there are societal things that we can incorporate into our shadow is dogma. Similar to religious dogma. When religious dogma or tenets tells us about ourselves, especially starting as a child, then we internalize that and we believe that about ourselves. And then we're operating in that way. But it can also tell us about other people. For instance, just as an example, if somebody goes to a Christian church, okay, I'm in the United States, so that's one of the biggest religious practices here. Somebody goes to church, and at that church, they tell people that anyone who is not Christian is going to burn in HE double hockey sticks. Okay. We internalize that. And so what we do for ourselves is to say, I can never not be Christian. So I have to always act and behave in the way in which I deem is acting and behaving in a way that's Christian. Now, because we're humans, there's going to be times that we make mistakes, right? Now I'm a failure. I'm a bad Christian. Okay. So then we start into this process where we're placing value on things. It messes with our shadow. We start self-sabotaging. I'm never going to be a perfect Christian, so screw it. I'm just going to do X, Y, and Z. And then the way that we interact with other people, when we're operating on that dogma, that when somebody is not Christian, we avoid them like the plague. We have to run away from them because at church we heard they were going to HE double hockey sticks. And because I know that I fail in my Christianity, but I don't want anybody else to know that, I can't be around that person. So hopefully you guys get what I'm talking about when I say religious dogma. And I'm not saying I'm not Christian or I am Christian or any of that. I'm just talking about dogma, the things that we believe. Okay. Hi, David. Okay, so Rael says, The irony is many of those females are miserable, trying to fit a carbon copy image of what is considered beautiful by only a certain demographic of men. And you know what I think helped some of the more recent changes? And not that it should be not that women's images of themselves should be 100% only based on what men find attractive. Okay, so that's my caveat in the beginning. But I think what helped some of the changes that we've seen in the modeling industry is men, a whole bunch of men saying, I don't find that sexually attractive. Or, that looks nice, but that's not who I would marry. Or I don't like that type of figure. I don't like that type of height, or I don't, this is what I like. This is what I like. This is, and so that gave women also the impetus to be like, well, I don't want to look like that either. And if I tried to look like that, I'd probably end up in the hospital, right? Like I don't have that metabolism. And how many eating disorders came out of the height of the modeling industry where people were so ridiculously thin. And then you go back a few hundred years before that, and the height of beauty was being fat, was being obese, right? Um, so who cares, right? But I think that's part of it, is that we started having conversations about what even is attractive. Like, that's beautiful for them, and if they are happy and healthy and that's how they look. I mean, most of them are like 17 years old, so they have great metabolisms, um, and that's the perfect way to show the clothing, then great. We need to take it that way and not internalize that that is the standard of beauty. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, we just go, "Oh, the clothes look great there." But even in doing that, you will start to hear people say, "Well, how does it look on a short person or someone who wears a medium, not a triple X small?" Or how does that look like on a plus size person? We now are like, okay, if we're just going to see it as the perfect way to show the clothes, I still want to know how the clothes are going to look on me because I don't look like that. So yeah, perfect example, Rael. So the unfortunate part is when we hear propaganda and stereotypes and dogma and all these things, it enforces and then reinforces, because now we're policing each other. We're making each other live up to some standard that we've internalized, and it just goes around and around and around and around. Society is, if our parents are our first unrealistic expectations type of relationship, society is number two. That is number two. Okay. So, how do you figure out if you're self sabotaging, or like how bad it is that you're self sabotaging? Because we all do it to a certain extent. Um, the first one is, does your behavior always line up with your long term goals? Now, again, we all take breaks and days of rest, and we make mistakes, or like we try and we don't succeed something, so we have to like revamp and refigure. Those are all very normal, but overarching, does your behavior line up with your long-term goals? If you don't know what your long-term goals are and you are living in autopilot, then your shadow and your inner child are controlling more than what you want them to, because that's where autopilot comes from. That's our subconscious. That is autopilot. So if you haven't worked on your long-term goals, what do you want your life to look like in a year, and 5 years, and 10 years? And is your behavior overarchingly lining up with those goals? Are you steady making movement towards that? You know, Again, like I said, we all take breaks, we all take days of rest, and we all make mistakes, or we try something and it fails. But are we steady still, overarchingly, the big picture? Are we making progress towards that? Inspired Truth says, Hope I'm not here late. I mean, we started 45 minutes ago, but there's also, the replay or go back and put it on 2 times speed. I don't think I sound too weird at 2 times speed. I think you can still understand it. So it's not bad. Plus, it's being recorded. How could you actually be late? Whenever you get here is when you're on time. Okay, Rael says, yep. Men, and I mean men's, variety in terms of beauty gives women a wide range to fit in and get chosen. If we all liked a carbon copy look, most women would go single. Yeah, because, and the same goes for guys too, is like some women like this, some women that, I mean, it's all preferences, right? That's, we all have preferences. And because even women, straight women, find beauty in other women in certain ways. There's certain things that they like about them. And so having this 6 foot tall, blonde, ultra skinny, leggy model be the pinnacle of beauty, it doesn't fit anybody. It's such a small number of people of what they actually find beautiful. And, for me, I find beauty in imperfection, like inside and out. That's the uniqueness of people, the authenticity of people, the differences of people. Like that's, I find it, things that I find interesting are beautiful to me. Interest equals beauty, right? Carbon copy things, surface level stuff. I don't find it that really interesting. Okay. Probably why as far as mental health is concerned, I'm much more interested in pathology and deeper things and existential crisis and personality disorders than, I have a test tomorrow and I'm super anxious, although everybody needs help. Okay, so Rael says, women should feel thankful that we don't tend to allow someone to tell us what's beautiful to us. We tend to like what we like. Propaganda definitely works through, though, unfortunately. Yeah, yeah, and like I said, I think men speaking up about some of that stuff, women were speaking up. I'm not gonna say that they weren't, they were just completely silent, but I think we were absorbing more of it than we really should, and as men spoke up, it gave women more confidence, to speak up, and so changes were made, which is great. Lawrence Ross says, from Karen Carpenter to Melissa McCarthy. Oh, that's a wide range, isn't it? But Melissa McCarthy's happily married, so I guess that's a good example. You know what I mean? Because she is a much bigger woman. She's not tall, not the standard of beauty that you would think, right? So for sure. So back to, how do you find out if you do this, or like how bad it is, that you're doing it? Is your behavior line up with your long-term goals? What are you doing that's not helpful for you to achieve your goals? Like, what do you keep doing? So this is where we find a lot of procrastination, perfectionism, overcompensating for things. That's just not helpful. Things that I'm doing that are just not helping. Things that I keep having to recover from. Do I gosh, I don't know why, but I just thought about like pathological liars. Okay, people who lie. Now, by the way, that's a trauma response. So, but that doesn't mean you have to put up with it. People who are pathological liars keep having to recover from the lies, right? So those are things that are not helping you achieve your goals. This is self-sabotage, right? So instead of dealing with the pain in the moment of the truth, then all the lying and the reaching and the making up things to avoid the pain in the moment hinder and harm you down the road. Now, was that intentional? Nope. So self-sabotage. And then thirdly, what are you doing that makes life hard? What are you doing that makes life hard? That's where you can find the self-sabotage. Okay. All right. So what do you do? What do you do when you've been self-sabotaging and you're trying to stop the self-sabotaging? What do you do? What else is yes, imperfections are beautiful, aren't they? Aren't they? I appreciate it more. I appreciate authenticity like more than anything. I think that's beautiful. Okay, so number one, what do you do for self-sabotaging? Stop self-effacing, meaning putting yourself down. So this is, and I'm talking about beyond being humble or showing humility or like a very rare, well-timed, self-effacing joke. Sometimes it's just funny and it comes to you and it's so funny and you got to say it and people are going to laugh. And I totally get that. But, just putting yourself down. Okay. Because that's when we take what the inner voice is saying and we're saying it to ourselves now. It's like where the inner voice is like, yeah, because you're stupid. Where they're like, I don't know if I want to do that. And then her voice is like, yeah, you're too stupid to do it anyway. And then you're like, yeah, I am pretty stupid. I didn't finish school. I did this dumb thing, right? Like we give into the self-effacing. So number one, stop self-effacing because all you're doing is enforcing and reinforcing those negative beliefs and patterns. So you got to stop doing it. Stop yourself. I know somebody who, when they hear that in their head, something self-effacing, some kind of put down, they'll literally say out loud, "We don't speak to ourselves like that," and I like it, right? Like if you wouldn't let somebody else speak to your friend like that, don't allow your inner voice to speak to you like that. And eventually, the habit will come in place where you're just not going to listen to that, and it stops saying it. Okay. Number two, stop avoiding your feelings. Man, this one is really hard, especially when we're avoiding emotional pain in the moment. We got to feel them. We got to take the information in, study them, understand them. What's the information I'm being given by this emotion? It's just like pain or hearing something or cold or, right? It's just information. What is the information? Feel the feeling, move through it, because it's just gonna create self-sabotage later. Putting off distress or suppressing it ensures that it will come back later. You lock it in a box, it's gonna come back later in some way. You put some salve on it or some avoidance in some way, it will come back. It may look a little different, but it's coming back, right? It will build up. It will come back. The unfortunate thing is when it comes back, it may be worse because it's going to grab some buddies on the way out of other things that you've suppressed or compartmentalized or, just tried to avoid, used avoidance. All right. The next one is stop creating pain to beat somebody to it. So this is where I said I was going to talk about relationships and self-sabotage. So a way that we beat somebody else to the pain, like I'm going to hurt me before you hurt me, because if I hurt me, at least I'm in control of it. And, at least that's something. So this is like breaking up with somebody to avoid them breaking up with you first. And then you find out, oh, they weren't going to break up with me and they're totally in love with me. And, they were making all these moves to, for me. Right. But now you've broken up. So self-sabotage, right? Like now you've hindered and harmed yourself in some way. Sorry, my dog's looking at something. Trying to figure out what she's looking at. Anyway, so this is what we do in relationships sometimes is like we start to view relationships like it's a competition. There has to be a marriage winner, or a boyfriend girlfriend winner. There's a winner, there's a loser. when relationships aren't like this. But we start doing that when we're self-sabotaging because it's like, I'm gonna look better in this situation, so I'm gonna throw you under the bus. I'm gonna break up with you before you break up with me. I feel like you're mad at me, so I'm gonna start a fight, so we can get it over with. Right? All of this is forms of self-sabotage in a relationship, right? So for me, um, I've said this to people before where like everybody's staring at their belly button. If you guys don't know what that means, it's like when you stare at your belly button, it's because you're like, oh, when you're hanging your head. Okay. And so like you're just staring at your belly button. Um, we've got to stop staring at our belly button and start actually gazing at our navel, right? And so when you gaze at your navel is to look at where you've come from, right? So we can we can keep making mistakes and we can be doing self-sabotaging and those kind of things, or we can do some work to feel our feelings, figure out our traumas, figure out what our triggers are, what our unconscious behaviors are, how we do these things, where we came from, and move forward in a better way. So less staring at your belly button, a little more gazing at your navel. So we got to figure out like, who are you? Why are you? What do you want? Right? Like just overarching, what do you want? How do you get there? And why? Just why? Right? Ryle says, I really don't like when people say you're being emotional. We are emotional beings by nature. 100%. Feeling and ego-based thinking are misconstrued. Feelings are genuine. Me is more of the issue. Yeah. Like, I think the thing is that sometimes we say, sometimes, not everybody, right? But sometimes we say somebody's being too emotional when they're off balance. Okay. Again, yes, I totally agree. We are feelings based. We are emotion based. We have emotions. Emotions are information. And sometimes we lose the hold on our emotion, especially when big things happen, right? So we may be in the bed crying for a couple hours, or we may lose our temper and throw something down on the floor. That's when we are entirely governed by our emotion. And we're not using any of our logical mind to make wise decisions and wise movements, right? We're too emotional. But a lot of times also people will tell us we're too emotional because they're way too much in their rational mind and they see no value in emotion or feeling. They believe that the best way to operate in the world is to be like a robot or Spock or the Borg, just be completely analytical because feelings are dumb and stupid and or feminine or whatever. When we're now totally ignoring and negating some of the emotion that our human body and human nature is giving to us, right? So in the theory of dialectics, to be wise, you have to be half rational, half emotional. So totally agree. Rael says we don't need more emotionally disconnected people. There's such thing as constructive anger. Yeah, righteous anger too. Even anger is not a negative emotion. There is no negative emotion. I hate when people call that because it makes it sound like it's a bad emotion. It's not. It's all information. Rael says what you do with it can be negative. Yeah, what you do with any emotion can be negative, right? Adrix says 7 of 9 returned. The Borg. Hi, Adrian. He says robot Spock Borg. I felt attacked. Well, a lot of times men are taught that too. Like that emotions are feminine and you're only allowed to either be fine or angry and you can't have other emotions. Like you also can't be too joyful because being too silly is being immature, right? So you can't be too happy, you can't be too joyful, you either have to be like stoic or pissed. And that's the two that you get. So a lot of times men will take on that, nonchalant or stoic robot Spock Borg type of behavior because they are told that is masculinity, that is manhood, that is how you are a man. Um, and so they suppress and ignore their emotions, which is unfair to them, right? Like we as a society, when we teach men that, we're literally taking away part of their humanity. And that's just, it's so unfair. Lawrence Ross says, so pay 2,000 to 4,000 to go into the woods. No. All right. So to me, at the end of the day, so I'm gonna wrap it up here. Look at right at an hour. Um, Self-sabotage has a lot to do with protecting yourself, trying to be right, trying to be good, trying to be seen as good, trying to feel good, trying to be good. And a lot of it goes back around to ego, right? It goes into toxic perfectionism. We're just, you know, we're trying to be something, and we may be going around it in a way that we shouldn't. And so our internal joker is like, watch this. And then we self-sabotage, right? So at the end of the day, I just want you guys to understand that there's no safety in being perfect. Being perfect, being seen as right or good or the best or any of that kind of stuff, it doesn't give you any more control of your life, and it doesn't create any more safety in your life. So, time to feel our feelings and live our lives and be authentic and let the chips fall where they may. All right. So, coming up on Wednesday, we're going to have shadow work, which I haven't put it up yet, but we're going to talk about Aristotle's definition of truth, which is what is, and what is not is not. Now, he said it in a really confusing, conflated way, which is hard to like quote him, but essentially, what is, and what is not, or it is what it is, and it's not what it's not. So we're going to talk about that. What is truth? Because we're getting more into being authentic. And then next Sunday, we'll have another live. So if I don't see you guys on Wednesday, I will see you next Sunday. If I don't see you in chats. Yeah, Adric says freedom from perfectionism, 100%. Peace to you, Adric. All right, everybody enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I will see you sometime next week. Bye.